What would you do if you were out on a camping trip and you get to where you think is the campsite, only to find out that you were just a few hundred feet away from where you were supposed to be camping, and you think you've done everything right, and then all of a sudden, just a week or two later, you get a letter in the mail that says you are now headed to court, and the United States of America is now prosecuting you, and they are trying to throw you in prison. This is exactly what happened to my good friend Eric Hanson when we were on our backpacking trip to the Grand Canyon, where I had to get rescued. And as soon as I was evacuated out of there and sat in a hospital for 3 days, this whole situation happened to Eric. Before we get into that though, I just want to say it is a huge deal when a product that I've been using for probably 3 years decides to become a supporter of this channel. There's no way that we could run this channel without the support of sponsors. And so Onyx Backcountry has become a sponsor of this channel, and they're gonna help support this channel for the next few months. So it would mean the world to me. And if you don't know who Onyx Backcountry is, they're an app that helps you navigate out in the backcountry. It'll mean the world to me if you could click on the link below and purchase their app. For like $30, you can buy their app, but for a limited time through Black Friday, it's 30% off. They also have an elite version for $99 that's also 30% off. So basically this app helps you navigate fully in the backcountry, almost exactly like a GPS. And it helps you find campsites, water sources, helps you plan hikes, helps you find new hikes. It's basically a backpacking trip in the palm of your hand. And if you click the link below, all you gotta do is go, it'll take you directly to their website, you download the app, you get 30% off. If you've ever wanted to support this channel, this is a great way to do that. Support this channel by supporting our sponsors. All right, let's get started with this conversation. Yeah, so if you don't know Eric, this is my buddy Eric, who we've backpacked. How many trips have we been on? Probably 6, 7, maybe 8, more, 9, a lot.
Has it been that many?
I don't know. It
3
feels
years
like
of glory, I would say.
3, yes.
That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, it feels like at least every 6 months we're somewhere. Well, that would make 6 trips.
That's about right.
3 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was way off. But the one in last February was definitely the most eventful that we've ever been on. If you don't know what happened, Eric and I went on a trip where I got really sick, almost died, and had to get rescued. And if Eric hadn't have been there, I don't think I probably would have been dead on the side of a hill. So thanks for that.
You know, Dan, that was quite an experience. But I don't think he'd be dead. I don't want to take full credit for your rescue. And also, like, Jake and Emmett were also incredible as
they were. Yeah, yes, they were. They were for sure.
It was harrowing for sure. That was the most fear I've experienced being on a backpacking trip, was around your health and just how that could have gone being as remote as we were.
And if those emotions weren't enough, some crazy stuff happened after the trip. And I have one really big question for you, but I think I'm going to save that question for you.
Okay.
For a little bit. But so I get rescued, and I'm, dealing with what I'm dealing with. I've spent 3 days in a hospital in Kanab, Utah. And while I'm there, some stuff happens to you guys. And I want to hear, I guess, from your mouth, because I have my thoughts on the whole thing, but I just want to hear from your perspective of what happened, why it happened, how it happened, and then sort of what your opinions are on everything.
Yeah. So I was expecting the rescue that we had just gone through to be the most eventful part of this backpacking trip. And in the moment, it certainly was. But we had made an emergency camp at the North Rim Trailhead, the North Kaibab Trailhead, which is about 1.5 miles away from the actual backcountry campground, which is where we had a permit for. But everything is covered in about 8 to 10 feet of snow. The North Rim is closed. Like, to get to where we were, you have to hike from the South Rim, which is what we did, which is 20 plus miles away. And most people just don't do that. This was February, and I had been in the North Rim before in the winter, and there was just no activity, no rangers, nothing. And so I think that because of that prior experience, I was just kind of thinking like, well, we've already impacted our campsite. We're exhausted, emotionally drained. We'd gone through this ordeal. Let's just leave our stuff here. And we were there to film a television show, Epic Trails, which I hosted for a while. And so it was like, okay, well, let's just go, leave our stuff here. We've already made the impact of setting up our tents here. Nobody's here at the North Rim. And so we went off to the rim to film some stuff and kind of hang out, kind of decompress a little bit, because we were all just, had burned through so much physical energy, as well as probably even more so like the mental, emotional energy of around the rescue. And while we were there was we had been there for a couple hours, and a ranger came up and was like, "Hey, notice your tents are still at the trailhead. You have to, you can't stay there. You have to move them." So I was like, dang it.
Was this the same ranger that had pulled me out of the tent, or were these different guys?
Totally new ranger. Had never seen this person before. So they told Jake, actually, he was the closest person, that we needed to go move our tents. So we did. We went back. We immediately stopped what we were doing and went back to the trailhead to get our stuff and to pull it back. And when we got there, because it was 1.5 miles away in the snow, like, it just takes a lot of time. So we got there at around 4:30 or 5 or so, which is pretty much, these are the darkest days of the year, so it's getting dark at that point in time. And then the ranger who was involved with your rescue did come by. He was driving back from actually dropping you off. And he stopped, and we started chatting with him, and he was basically like, "You guys can't camp here," saying the same thing that the other ranger had said. You need to go on to where your permit is. And so as we were chatting, something else that had happened that kind of muddied the water was we had encountered another national park employee who was out there, and we're like, "Oh, this ranger just told us to move. We're going to go to the campground." And he was like, "Why are you going to the campground? It's buried in 10 feet of snow. You guys are already at the trailhead. You're leaving tomorrow morning. Just stay there." So when this other ranger, the second ranger now in the sequence, back again at the trailhead, told us we got to move. I told him this employee was like telling us we didn't have to. And he's like, "Okay, well, yeah, that's unfortunate. We do need you to move. You can't stay here because in case anybody else comes, it's confusing. We need to get you out of the way." And then this is kind of where the directions get confusing, because in my interpretation of how the conversation went, he was saying, "I get it, just get out of the way. All we need for you to not be here at the trailhead. So there's a general store down the road to the on the way to the campground, and just get back behind there. If you get back anywhere back there, we're good. No worries. Nobody's going to come check that you're at like the right camp spot or anything like that." So we did that. We picked up our stuff. We hiked more than a mile, to comply with what the ranger had asked. And in our interpretation, we weren't necessarily trying to get to the campground. We were getting to an acceptably out of the way place. And
was there a trail, or was it a road? What
there
was it that you were
the
hiking
road
on?
that you were driven out on that continued the other direction to the rim and went towards the campground, but then that stopped being plowed. So we snowshoed down.
So you're snowshoeing of a road.
Off of a road.
So I'm thinking to myself, there's a general store, there's a road, there's a parking lot. So you're just road hiking, and then you're just like right off the road.
Yeah, so then at some point they just stopped plowing. So then there's like this big bank of snow. There's a gas station, and we get on our snowshoes and we're just plowing, walking down towards the campground. We don't actually know how far down it is. There's no signs that say like campground, half a mile, whatever. So anyway, we pass the gas station and are like, I think this is what the ranger was talking about. Let's just stay here for the night. So
can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Did you have coordinates? I don't remember. You were the one that was like, you were maintaining like the navigation of where we were camping. I kind of feel like we were sort of along for the ride. I knew the names, but I didn't have like, so if anybody's wondering, like I didn't have, like, I don't remember you ever giving me specific camp locations, but did you have like a GPS camp location? Like, were you able to tell on a map, this is exactly where we're supposed to stay? Or was this like, it sounds like, I think this is it. This is about where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. So it was on a map. It wasn't, we were very close. We were like 200 yards away from the actual permitted campground, but based on it was kind of like the ranger was basically saying, at least my interpretation of it was, just get invisible, get out of the way, get off the trailhead, which we were doing. Now, it did feel like we were moving all this way just to then backtrack a few hours later because we were hiking out and resuming our trip across the canyon. So this did feel like we're doing a lot of effort to just get out of the way. And granted, it was the permitted campground and it was where our permits were for, but there's nothing out there. They didn't like, it's not like they were maintaining anything. So it wasn't just the North Rim campground isn't maintained in the winter. It's just everything's covered in snow. So where we did make a mistake, where I made the mistake as trip leader, was basically just saying, this is good enough. I feel like we're complying with what the ranger has directed us to do. This isn't necessarily the campground, but what does it matter? Because everything is buried in 10 feet of snow. We're making no impact. Nobody's here. In the month of February, the amount of hikers that are going to come back here is like less than 10. There's a snowstorm that just happened. There's going to be another snowstorm in a day. Whatever impact we make is going to be invisible in like 20 hours. So it was one of those situations where technically I was wrong. I was not in the campground, but I believed our whole party, the way that we interpreted our interaction with the ranger was that we thought we were doing what was expected of us. Get out of the way, get off, you can't be at the trailhead. Just go towards the campground and just get anywhere behind this general store and we don't care. That's what we thought we were doing. Turns out the next day, another ranger, somebody who didn't even interact with us at all, came and saw where we had put our tents, just saw like little pads in the snow.
How close were you to the road? He must have been driving past? Or he saw like tracks or what?
They just followed our tracks, I think, out of curiosity and probably because it was the only thing that a ranger can patrol. Who was at
he's driving around, sees some snowshoe tracks and is like, oh, this is strange. Nobody else is up here. I wonder where this goes. And so he followed your tracks. Is that kind of what happened?
I think what was happening was that some of the rangers were just going to check that we had gone to the campground. And so we were down the road to the campground. We were very close, followed our tracks, and then just saw that we stopped about 200 yards shy of the campground, took some pictures of our footprints and our tent pads, and then called in to other rangers, the ones that we had actually interacted with, and were like, hey, did you tell these guys to move to the campground? And they were like, yeah. Well, at least this is my And then, they didn't do it. They didn't camp in the campground. And then so that ranger wrote us a ticket. And so after I'd been home for a week and a half or 2 weeks, I got this letter in the mail from the federal government that was, I'd committed a crime. I was a Class B misdemeanor and I need to go to court and all of this stuff. And when I got that, I was like, oh, that's annoying. I just thought it was going to be like a fine, like here's like a $100 parking ticket kind of thing. Like, but when I went to court, they were treating it as, you're now, this is a criminal proceeding. This is a Class B misdemeanor, which is the same offense as if you'd assaulted somebody. You're on probation. You can't leave the country. You can't, all of these like probation things, which are like stuff that wasn't necessarily a big infringement to me personally, but it's like, I can't be excessively drunk. I can't have possession of marijuana. I can't, like stuff that's like, okay, whatever. But the big thing for me was I couldn't leave the country. And the next week I was supposed to go to Rwanda. And the judge didn't give me permission then. I had to schedule a new hearing to present a case that I could go and leave the country and I wasn't a flight risk. And so I was, the whole thing, I wasn't mad that I got a ticket. I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. I guess according to the letter of the law, we didn't do what was exactly right. But it just felt like the scale of retribution was completely unwarranted for the level of infraction.
The punishment didn't fit the crime at all.
Yeah, it's like going to jail for parking illegally.
For sure.
It's like, yeah, I parked illegally. Do I need to spend 10 years in jail for this? If it's like, or stealing a loaf of bread and getting life in prison. I had to go to court 4 times. It was basically like a negotiation. So I go to court. They present a plea bargain, which was that, so we were there filming an Epic Trails episode. You were filming YouTube. I was filming YouTube as well. Nothing that was filmed, including your content, had to be removed, had to be taken off the internet. Nothing could ever air. Nothing could be posted to Instagram. They basically wanted our whole experience.
Oh, they wanted my content taken down too?
Everything.
Wow.
But the thing was like, I did have to get a lawyer. The lawyer was like, well, they can't legally enforce that. They can just dangle that and hope that you agree, say that you committed the crime. And then what they really wanted, I think, was they didn't want any evidence of the rescue being online. They didn't want any evidence of malpractice. Just, I don't know. I don't know what they really thought we were filming and documenting, but this is my interpretation, is when people come to do stuff in the national parks for social media gain, it's like, base jumping off of Half Dome or stuff that's not legal, but maybe people can get a bunch of views off of a video. And I don't even think they really looked at my history and what I do on YouTube and how I've tried to be an educational source for people, responsible. And they just were like, oh, a YouTuber, we don't want his content on seen by anybody. It must be bad. It must be what we don't want, the kind of content that we don't like. So people have commented on my YouTube channel that, oh, you're just some YouTuber that wants to glorify this. Why didn't you just take it down? You're just doing this all for the sake of a YouTube video. There's multiple reasons why I wouldn't agree to that plea agreement, but one of them was, it wasn't even my decision. Heliconia, which was the production company, had already paid a bunch of money, gone through the steps to get commercial filming permits, had agreements in place for broadcast rights and all of that stuff, sponsorship and endorsements. There was, a lot of money that was already invested in, and we'd gone through, proper protocols. So we were just like, we're not doing that. not going to scrub this from the internet forever, which isn't, we had our First Amendment rights to say what we want and tell whatever stories we want. So it came, they basically were threatening to put me in jail, have me be on a 5-year probation, which would mean I couldn't go in national parks for 5 years, restricted travel, restricted ability to stuff, again, like drink alcohol and smoke weed or just have a firearm or something like that. That I was like, this is, again, just so over the top. Eventually it came down that they said that they wouldn't put me in jail and they wouldn't have me on probation, but I can pay up to a $5,000 fine. And so I took that plea agreement, and then they fined me $1,000. So
Whoa.
It all did come down to essentially a penalty, but it was like a fine penalty. But it was, now I have a criminal record. I have been fingerprinted. I've got a mugshot.
It wasn't an actual arrest, right? Because arrest is like they throw you in handcuffs, and
they didn't put me in handcuffs, but I did have to.
Were you arrested?
I did have to. No, I was not arrested, but I did have to present myself to the U.S. Marshals and say, wow, I am submitting myself so they could fingerprint me and take my photo, my mugshot, and all of that, and which was, I really have a mugshot. So
can I just put this? Okay, tell me if I'm getting this right. We have the most emotionally draining trip ever. I almost die. You guys literally, gave so much of yourselves to save me, get me out. We do all this stuff. Now you're emotionally left drained. I would argue at that moment, you guys probably couldn't really make very good decisions either, because you don't have to imagine, but for people that are watching, just imagine the amount of stress that you guys were under as well. You're running on no sleep. Everybody's hungry. It's freezing cold. There was so many things that were going on there. And then did you get a ticket, like a physical ticket? Did they hand it to you, or did it just like come in the mail?
It came in the mail like 2 weeks after the trip.
Okay, so in your mind, you think I'm doing everything correct. You're like 200 yards from the actual campsite. Did you think, was there a moment you're like, yeah, this probably could be the campsite? Or were you like consciously going, this ain't the campsite, but who cares? He said we could stay here.
To me, at that point, I wasn't even thinking, is this the campsite? I was thinking, oh, this is where the ranger told us to go.
And it just happened to be 200 yards from the campsite that you were supposed to be at?
Well, the way that the ranger had phrased it was, there's a general store, go towards the campground. There's a general store. Anywhere back there, we don't care anymore.
Okay.
So we passed the gas station. I didn't realize that in 200 more yards, we would pass the general store, which is within the campground.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that there's real criminals out there that they could have been chasing, right?
They could have been.
There's actual people who have malice in their minds who they probably should have been chasing, but instead they were looking for something to do. Maybe bored, something. There was obviously a lack of communication. If anybody had at all a heart, they don't have to write the ticket. They can use judgment, right? They could just be like, they've been through an awful lot. Let's let this one slide. This guy obviously thought that but they didn't do that. Do you think that they felt like, do you think that they knew this was going to progress into something like, is this a big conspiracy? They were all in on trying to throw you under the bus just to prove a point?
I don't think the Rangers were thinking that. I think the Rangers were just being sticklers for their, like, the law and the steps that you need to take. And then they wrote a ticket, or not a ticket, a citation. And I think on some level, there's probably an assumption that the next in the chain of command will if this is frivolous, they'll just drop it. They'll because the judge or the prosecutor could have elected to just be like, we don't need to go through this. This is all for camping, a minor infraction for camping out of bounds. We think that your intent was fine. You weren't trying to glorify breaking the law in the national parks. You weren't trying to be base jumpers with, smoke screaming out your parachute and make a rad video of you breaking the law. You were trying to do what was right.
So who's this? Are you allowed to say like names of people? Who's the judge? What is this, a new guy? What is this? Why wouldn't this judge just be like, this is ridiculous? Is this really what's in my courtroom right now? Like, let's get a real criminal in here. Did they run out of criminals? That's what it sounds like.
So I'm hesitant. I don't want to say names. I don't want the swarms of internet people.
See, that's how good of a guy this is right here. He doesn't even want to say their name.
Yeah. I'm sure if you wanted to be an internet sleuth, you could figure it out. So the judge that I worked with, in some ways I understand. So she has, being a judge within this zone is unique because the Grand Canyon is a part of her jurisdiction. And she has a view that the Grand Canyon is kind of like her baby. She is the Grand Canyon's protector. It's why she wanted to be a judge in this area. And her heart, I think, is that she loves the Grand Canyon. And so when people do wrong in her Grand Canyon, she wants the law to be upheld. And I'm assuming that was basically it. She just was like, you broke the law in my Grand Canyon. I'm not dropping the case. You have to pay the consequences. To me, it seems like an absurd reaction, an absurd. If they had just sent me $100, like just a citation, a fine, I would have been like, that's annoying, but okay, whatever. But like to have a criminal record now, possibly not be able to travel to countries I want to travel in or work in, or whatever other consequences come with having a criminal record now. It just feels so wrong. But she was, in her mind, I think, doing her duty. That
it is wrong. I mean, they tried to throw you in prison.
That was an option. They did not.
If they could have, would they have, do you think?
I think ultimately she wouldn't have gone for that. But I think the lawyer, you never know, because anything's on the table. It's within the scope of, they could have done a year in jail, 5-year probation, $5,000 fine. And the lawyer that I had was like, we don't know what she's going to do. If we don't negotiate a plea agreement down, you very well could get time in jail. She might, maybe it probably won't be a year, but it might be 3 months. It might be 6 months. And you probably will have a couple of years, probably closer to 5 years of probation and maybe a 5,000. Yeah. Like we didn't really know. It's all seemed, the lawyer that I had was like, this to me is government overreach. This is absurd. I mean, the reason why I'm taking your case is because I find it interesting. It feels wrong. But, yeah, I don't know what the judge would have done.
This reminds me of like those like silly laws that towns had from like the 1800s that are like still on the books.
You shall not have a coconut greater than 1 kilo.
Yes, exactly. I mean, so I'm not going to call anybody out either at all, but there are YouTubers who make a living stealth camping, illegally camping. And I'm not saying that that's right, and I'm not saying that that's wrong. I just find it completely mind-blowing that this, of all situations, is the one that they went after to make an example out of. Did you explain why I wasn't involved in any of this? Because I technically camped illegal, almost dead, but illegal at the North Rim. Why wasn't I in court with you?
my name was on the permit. Yours wasn't. Jake and Emmett, it was the same thing. I was the trip leader. I was the person who was supposed to know better. And so they wanted to make an example out of me. I was the one with a television show, a YouTube platform. And so I was the one that they were interested in coming down on. They didn't really care what Jake and Emmett or you, even though you have, in many ways, a bigger platform. But my name was the one on the permit.
So because our names weren't on the permit, does that mean they couldn't come after us? I don't think that's true, right? Because you can go camping without a permit. There's a reason you have to get a permit. It's so that you don't get in trouble, right? So if we didn't have a permit to camp there, they could have easily come after us, right?
Yeah, I think they could have come after you, and the whole party. They just chose not to. They wanted one person to. I think they just were like, I have no idea, but I think they wanted their pound of flesh, I guess. And pound of flesh, I mean, it makes it sound like I recognize that there are much graver injustices within our judiciary system. Within, like, for me, like, I'm fine. I'm not worried about it. And there's much bigger injustices that happen. So I'm not trying to equate my story with somebody who's spending life in prison for like an ounce of weed or something like that. But it does feel ridiculous at the same time. And I don't know why. I guess you owe me you want to pay my fine? You owe me $1,000, bro.
I would have.
Pay up.
To make this go away. I would have done it. I would have just been like, just take this and let's all walk away. And if this is what it takes,
because it took months to resolve this thing. Like, it dragged out until, well, that was February. Then the event happened, and I had multiple court things for several months up until like July.
I'm obviously upset that this happened to you. I'm upset that this happened based on everything else that was going on. I think I'm also really upset because I think if anybody on the other side who was prosecuting you was trying to do something, good for the Park Service, I think it did the polar opposite. Because what does this do for people? How does this make people feel when they now go out places, hearing a story like this, and now they're going, well, man, am I outside the bounds? Like, where's the physical bound? If I'm a foot outside of the bounds, are they going to come after me too? Like, forget it. I don't even want to go there. Like, I want nothing. They're making it so difficult for people by doing this. I think it's a turnoff, and I think it's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace for the outdoor community. And I don't know that I'm necessarily angry at the attorneys, although I am angry at the attorneys. I'm more angry at the judge. I think maybe the attorneys were maybe just doing their job as defending or prosecuting you to a degree, but I don't know. Maybe I should be angry at the attorneys. I'm not a law guy, so I don't know who is like, who's the puppeteer in all this? Like, who's the control? Where is it coming from? But the whole thing, just anybody could have at any moment just been like, this is a really bad idea. This is stupid. We're wasting a lot of taxpayer resources here.
Of all the people involved, the people that I blame the least are the Rangers. I think that they were trying, and it just, like, at least the two Rangers that we actually had real conversations with, I think they were reasonable. And it was a third one that wrote us the citation that never interacted with us and just kind of through telephone felt like we were making a bigger error than we had, because I don't know. That's my guess.
Do you think he was just, I mean, did he not know what happened the night before? He had to have known.
They
right?
all
there has
knew
to be,
for sure. They all
right. So was he just like, well, we gave him a chance. We better just at least remind them that they should. Here's a ticket. It's not enough that your friends almost died in a hospital bed, but you know what? Here's a ticket. I mean, to me, that's the guy that probably shouldn't be a Ranger. Like, that's just like one of those things you're just like, come on, dude.
I feel like it was like it was. I don't think the Rangers should have written it, but I don't also blame them. I think that there's other steps, like the prosecutor chose to prosecute when they're the person that I feel like should have been like looked at the case and been like, I'm not spending government resources on this. This is dumb. We're dropping this case. Like no harm was done. Even if I had intended to commit a crime, which I wasn't intending to commit a crime, but there was no harm. Nothing happened. Like nobody's life was altered from our decision to camp where we did. No, we didn't harm trees. We didn't harm anything. Like we didn't leave anything behind. So I think that prosecutor should have been the one who was like, we're dropping the case. From what I talked with the lawyer, the prosecutor was new. And what the lawyer said was new prosecutors often don't know what to drop and what to prosecute because they don't want their legal colleagues to judge them for dropping a case that they should have prosecuted. So they prosecute everything when they really should have a little bit more of a judgment around what's a good use of the core resources.
Right.
But then the judge, who probably also could have tossed the case, but because the prosecutor was wanting to prosecute, the judge is like, well, I'll just let the prosecutor do their job and I will just be the judge of whatever the prosecutor. Like each person was kind of letting the other people do their jobs. And nobody, in my opinion, somebody should have just been like, what are we doing? Drop this case. This is dumb. Everybody was kind of looking for somebody else to make that decision. And since nobody did, it just kind of kept going forward.
Wow.
I don't know.
Are you hesitant? Like, you've obviously camped since then.
I have camped in that since then. It's a shame for me because the Green Canyon is so close to me, but it doesn't make me want to go back into the Green Canyon. Like, I kind of don't want anything to do with the National Park Service. I actually, of all the government agencies, it's odd that I'm the most upset with, generally speaking, the National Park Service. I just find them to be very frustrating to work with. And even for people who are trying to do the right thing, they choose dumb. I don't know.
Do you think that, now this is obviously this is a conspiracy theory, but do you think that this has anything to do with the fact that we were filming? Because I just find it interesting that they picked so heavily on you at the same time that they're picking on so many people for film permits and, not having film permits and stopping filmers. And
I do think if we were just hikers, there's in my opinion, no way that they would have written us a ticket and done the things that happened. But because we were filming with commercial permits. The national park had issued, so just so everybody's clear, we had gotten official permission to film. We'd paid like $1,000 for the right to film in the national park. But I believe that because we were filming, that was why they wanted to come down on us. I just think that they don't want people at all filming anything on any level in the national parks, whether it's for YouTube, for TV, for TikTok, whatever. I just don't think they want it. So they're choosing to try to disincentivize people from doing it. But like you said, what was the real outcome? Well, they only knew that who to write a ticket to because I had given them my name in applying for the permit. So I don't know.
So whoa, hold on. That throws a whole nother wrench. Maybe we should have just never had a permit, right? Like at the end of the day, if you had not had a permit, would that have showed up at your doorstep?
They wouldn't have known who to send it to because we would have been anonymous.
Right. There's just so many stupid decisions that were made in this whole thing that make it even more ironic. Not on your part. I'm talking on just the whole thing. When you look back on it, it makes me just, all this is going to do for people now is scare. If the more they think about it, right? Well, forget it. I'm not going to fill out a permit if they're going to have my name. Why would I fill out a permit? Let's just go. Let's just go do it. Let's just hope that a ranger doesn't see us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing.
That's what's frustrating to me, is because I was on all of the steps in the way. I was trying to do the right thing. I don't love the fact that I need a commercial filming permit to film in a national park. I feel like my personal views are that it's public land. If I want to, it's one thing if I'm making a Transformers film and I want to, blow up a semi truck at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, to just just to have a camera and not infringe upon anyone else's experience. I don't agree with charging people and making people jump through all these hoops to just tell their stories. But I was trying to do the right thing, even though I didn't love the law. I was being like, okay, well, that's the law, so I'm going to get a permit. I'm going to pay the fee to get the filming permit. I'm going to get a permit for our campgrounds. I'm going to do the right things. I was trying to comply with the ranger, even though it was felt like we're going to be here for 4 hours and then we're going to hike out of here. Just let us be here. But we were still trying to comply. On every step, we were trying to do the right thing. And to come back and have it, to have to pay the consequences, I'm just really annoyed with it.
Yeah, I can tell how annoyed you are. I'm annoyed with it too. So I have one big question for you. Why did you wait 6 months to tell me about this? I was completely clueless.
Yeah.
I think I don't even remember where we were.
We were backpacking in Oregon together, and I just told you,
right.
Oh, by the way.
Yeah, why didn't you tell me? So
for
those of you watching, I had no idea this even went down. What?
I was scared for how you were going to react.
How I was going to react?
I didn't want you doing anything you'd regret.
You're like, I know Dan.
No, I don't know. Honestly, I mean, it's not an exciting answer. I think I really was just juggling a lot of things in life. I just kind of forgot to tell you. And then when we were backpacking together, it was like, Dan, I've got to tell you what's been happening. Sorry, I left you in the dark for so long there, buddy.
Yeah. Wow.
What I should have done is I should have hit you up for money.
You should have.
Yeah.
You should have. Yeah, for sure.
I really blew it there.
Well, I don't think this was a win for the National Park Service by any means. If anything, the negative press that's you've had hundreds of thousands of people watch your video. The story's been told already. I'm not the first person to talk about this. The negative press on the National Park Service because of this, I think, is enormous. It's definitely not a win for them. It's not a win for you because of what's going on. This was not a win for anybody. If anything, I think somebody needs to be ashamed of themselves for what happened, and look back on this and hopefully learn from something like this, because this is a disgrace. Isn't even the right word for something like this. For people to even have the power to do this is disgraceful. Somebody should have said, I don't know. It should have ended a whole lot earlier.
I mean, I fully believe that it should have either been tossed or they should have. Mostly, I just think it should have been tossed. And I don't know if there was an alternative to just say, here's a $100 even a couple $100 fine, but just not going through court proceedings and taking all of that just felt so over the top. I don't see how this was a win for the National Park Service. I don't really. I think they look silly too. I think that it doesn't paint them in a positive light. So I don't know, but maybe it does achieve their goal. Maybe they are trying to just deter people and be afraid of the national parks and be afraid of that any little infraction is going to possibly put them in jail in a national park.
That's true. It does seem like, sadly, that was the goal of at least whoever was involved in this situation. I mean, maybe there's somebody watching who's a part of the higher ups in the National Park Service of the Grand Canyon and is as angry as we are that this happened. If that's the case, do something about it, right? But if to me it seems like this was a really, really, really bad decision, not on your part. You did everything right, in my opinion. If you could replay everything that happened, you still would have done the same thing. Like, I feel like nothing would have changed. I mean, the only thing that maybe would have changed is you would have moved another 200 feet.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, what I would have done differently is as soon as you were rescued and moved out of there, instead of staying and leaving our tents at the trailhead, I would have just packed up and moved on. Because we definitely created more work for ourselves because we went from the trailhead to the rim to back to the trailhead to essentially back. We hiked an extra 6 miles just doing stuff for, that felt unnecessary. But like you said, we weren't in a state of making great decisions. We were exhausted, sleep deprived, emotionally drained, had almost seen one of our companions die. It's just a state where, yeah, we made a mistake, but I feel like any reasonable person would have been like, they made a mistake, but there wasn't harmful intent. Let's just, tell them they should just be in the campground next time. And that would have been accomplished their goals.
Yeah, it does. It certainly paints a different picture in my mind of the Park Service.
It's frustrating because I want to encourage people to go and experience our national parks and our beautiful places, and it just really frustrates me that I don't love the National Park Service, and I don't really want to encourage other people to go there when I feel like, I don't know, it's very frustrating.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, wow. Anyway.
That's my tale, Dan Becker.
That's it. That's your tale.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you just send me $1,000 in the mail and we'll call it good. I'll still be friends with you.
Yeah. Somebody out there, shoot Eric $1,000, would you? It ain't going to be me.
Should I start a GoFundMe?
Yeah, sure. Start a GoFundMe. Yeah, that's terrible. Well, I appreciate you at least talking about this again. I know this isn't fun for you to talk about, but I do think this is an important topic. I think people need to be aware of this stuff just to make it aware, because I think we can't really, I sort of feel like we're powerless, right? In a way, like it's not like we can call them up and be like, hey, you're bad. You don't ever do this again, because they're the National Park Service. You got to vote, right? You got to vote, or there's power in the media. Maybe that was it. Like us talking about this, I think that's going to maybe change some minds and get the word out there that this stuff does happen, and it's sad that it happens.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like this is, other than voting, this is where I have power, I guess, if you will, is just telling my story. That's like, because
right.
The national parks and the federal government can squash me if they want, but I can tell my story.
Yeah.
And that's really the only avenue I have to make it feel like maybe I want them to rethink their policy around coming down on people who are trying to do the right thing.
Yep. Well said. Yep. Well said. All right. Well, thanks, Eric. Let's go backpacking again. Let's
February is rolling around. You want to go get rim to rim to rim again?
I actually do. I actually do want to do it.
I know. I think it's going to be a few years before I go back to the Green Canyon.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Yeah.
But I will go backpacking with you. Where do you want to go?
Let's go. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Go somewhere a little warmer this time.
Yep. So, yeah, comment below. Let us know what your thoughts are on this whole thing. I'd love to hear it. I'm sure Eric would love to hear it. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say it. I guess you could say, just don't. I mean, whatever. Just don't be a douchebag. But that's always helpful. And yeah, so this is one of the crazier videos I think I'll ever make. So
the whole thing, it just blows my mind that one backpacking trip, the most singular, eventful backpacking trip I've ever been on. Hopefully, it doesn't ever get topped.
Yeah, I hope not, and especially not with me. That'd be nice.
Yeah, not with you.
Yeah. All right, man.
Dan, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. We'll see you out somewhere soon. Let's go.
Let's go, man.